Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Outgrow's Marketer of the Month. I'm your host, Dr. Saksham Sharda. I'm the creative director at outgrow.co. And for this month, we're going to interview Megan Sullivan, who's the creative director at Nextiny Marketing. Thanks for joining us, Megan.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
So, Megan, we're going to start with a rapid fire round just to break the ice. You get three
Perfect.
passes. In case you don't want to answer the question, you can just say pass. But try to
Okay.
keep your answers to one word or one sentence only, okay?
Deal.
All right, so the first one, at what age do you want to retire?
Ooh, 40.
How long does it take you to get ready in the mornings?
10 minutes.
Most embarrassing moment of your life?
Uh, um, Falling in front of a bunch of people when accepting an award.
Okay. Favorite color?
Orange.
What time of day are you most inspired?
Mornings.
How many hours of sleep can you survive on?
Ooh, 6.
Fill in the blank. An upcoming marketing trend is blank.
Um, an upcoming marketing trend
Mhm.
is
Blank.
okay.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm like, is great. An upcoming marketing trend is curious chat GPT to see what that comes of things.
The city in which the best kiss of your life happened.
Ooh, Florida.
Pick one, Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey.
Jack Dorsey.
The biggest mistake of your career.
Um, Gosh, sending out emails that were misspelled to a lot of people.
How do you relax?
Bubble bath.
How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
1.
A habit of yours that you hate.
Being on my phone too much.
The most valuable skill you've learned in life.
Mm, um, Resilience and treating people with kindness.
And the last one is your favorite Netflix show.
Ooh, right now, Survivor.
Okay. All right. Well, that was the end of the rapid fire round. So now we can go on to the bigger questions and you can answer them with
Awesome.
as much ease as you like. So no
Perfect.
pressure here. Okay. So, can you tell us about your experience working in HubSpot CMS and building CMS websites? How do you ensure that the CMS website is user friendly and easy to navigate for both the client and end users?
Yes, love this question. I started with the agency I'm working with now a little over 6 years ago and pretty much started right in with building websites and working within the HubSpot CMS. So, have a little over 6 years of experience specifically in the CMS platform. Really big fans of how easy it is and intuitive it is for a user to use, as well as the security and a ton of factors why we love the platform. Getting user experience right is something I'm really passionate about, and creating a really clean website that communicates clearly is something that, that's the whole meat and potatoes of things. But I think that setting the structure for your site and getting that really clear on who specifically needs to be spoken to on the site, what is the journey we want to send them on, is a big piece for sort of making it user friendly. If we know who we're talking to, we know how to talk to them and how to sort of navigate them on the site. So that's a piece. We do a lot of research beforehand, a lot of planning and preparation, when discovering site, when discovering how we're putting a site together, as well as obviously thinking through best practices that we know from data and research, of what's going to make the most sense. We don't have more than 7 items or 8 items on our main navigation, and we try to avoid drop downs. And there's a bunch of little tactical pieces that go into that. But getting your structure right, and obviously using the HubSpot CMS to make a site that's really pretty and communicates clearly goes a long way, when it comes to user experience for sure.
And do you feel websites are getting more and more simpler as we go into the future or more and more complicated?
I would say in some ways simpler. Like, I think it's very, if you look at a lot of websites now, you're seeing, people are having really simple, easy navigations with few pages and honestly not super content heavy sites. But at the same way, there's a lot of advanced things you can do with your sites, like creating smart content, so communicating specific language and communicating specific messaging on sites to someone who's viewing the site from one place or to someone who's coming to the site from Google or a paid ad, etc. So it's getting complex in some ways, but in a lot of ways, I would say sites or good sites are leaning towards being more simple, being more straightforward, having less copy, being easier to read, not having these massive, massive mega menus. And I think that's a positive change for us as users, as well as for companies who are taking advantage of that.
So could you relate this to the story brand methodology, and how can one use it to structure a web page?
For sure. So StoryBrand, if anyone's out there is not familiar, is basically it comes heavily from Donald Miller and his book. I think it's called The StoryBrand Methodology, and he talks all about this concept of story and how we see it in entertainment and in films, and these common themes of, there's a character who has a problem, and then they meet a guide who helps them overcome this problem, and there's this common theme that we as humans are drawn to for entertainment, and that we've seen over and over and over again throughout all of history. And what Donald Miller did is he said, hey, how can we use this engaging framework that seems to be a part of like the makeup of who we are, we're drawn to it, to actually use that in our marketing to tell better stories, to create marketing that actually connects with customers. I like to think of it as the difference between kind of talking at your ideal buyer personas versus talking to them and actually engaging them in conversation. So it's a really cool methodology that if you can master to create this story, the whole book and the framework takes you through a guide for your company, putting together who is your character, who's your ideal persona, what's the problem they have, both philosophical and practical. And then you are their guide. So you are not the hero of this story. Basically, this is the meat and potatoes of where we see this playing out in businesses. A lot of times businesses like to put themselves as the hero. Even you see that on website pages from the H1 where it's like owned and operated since X, Y, and Z, or, we are the world-class X, Y, and Z, which might be great information, but it's not what I want to know. Right, when I'm coming to your site, I want to know, how does your service or solution solve a problem that I'm trying to solve? And so it's the difference between positioning yourself as like, hey, we can help you become the hero. We can help you get your marketing right. We can help you, build your dream home or whatever it may be, and making them the hero, and you are just helping them along the way. And if you can get this sort of framework and this messaging right, it can make all the difference in how you are communicating to and with your clients by speaking like actually at them and with them, instead of sort of over their heads, or not hitting the nail on the head of connecting and engaging. So it's a super cool way that simplifies a lot of the guesswork of, if you can get your framework right, it simplifies a lot of this. Well, what do we put on the homepage? How do you can kind of, from every page on your site or landing page or campaign, you can kind of follow this simple structure of, okay, let's introduce who we are, and then let's, tell the customer we understand their problem, et cetera, et cetera. There's actually like a 7 or 8 part framework that they lay out of how to even structure your homepage specifically on your site. So it's a really powerful tool that you can even use in any aspect of your marketing. So one example of an email I just recently was talking about this with someone and had an email in my inbox, and it was 2 different companies trying to sell me a rug. And one of the companies was like, super rug warehouse sale now, something like that. And the other company was like, check out, like, you deserve a new rug, or your house deserves a new rug, or something like that. And it was like this messaging that was like, oh yeah, like I do actually deserve a new rug. Let me check it out. And it's the difference between, speaking directly to your customers and to their needs versus, sort of talking about yourself or presenting yourself as the hero of your story, where you create this kind of like, well, I'm automatically going to identify myself as the hero of my story. So when you are also the hero, it kind of creates this tension between like, well, let me try to get the best deal out of you, or let me try to, But when you can present yourself as the guide who has authority in this space to solve a problem, it's really easy to kind of walk ideal customers through this journey. So yeah, can go obviously on and on about it, but it's something we're really passionate about, and that simplifies getting messaging right on your site and honestly all of your marketing efforts.
So, keeping all this in mind, how do you specifically approach creating visual content that aligns with the client's brand and messaging?
Yeah, this is another great question and a fun thing to talk to with a fellow creative.
Hmm.
It's obviously always a fun challenge to work within a company's brand. We don't do a ton at my agency specifically of branding. So typically a company comes to us already with some brand standards established. And then it's really fun to go through this process of discovering what is your brand story? What is the character we're trying to talk to? Get a really clear understanding of that. And then try to communicate that visually through story, but also through really clear and stunning creative that's easy to connect with. And a lot of that does play back on that sort of initial story of coming up with this plot line and then producing images or graphics or visual displays that align with that really clearly. Another thing that we try to do is obviously have smiling faces on sites, have people who as humans, we connect with other humans, we connect with people who are successfully experiencing our product or service. So that's something that's a story brand piece that plays out visually in a lot of our sites. But practically, yeah, just getting a really clear understanding of who the brand identity is also exploring some of their competitors, how they have done it, how can we do it better, how can we communicate better, and then sort of trying to make that into obviously a really stunning website that does the job of speaking to its users as well as converting and ultimately getting more business for the company is what we're after, right? So it's a fun and challenging task, but one that we like to be up for the challenge for.
And how do you go about doing this competitor research in the first place?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is obviously there's some SEO research that goes into this piece, and a lot of it is also so we look at competitor analysis from a technical SEO standpoint, who's ranking better than them for keywords they're wanting to rank for. And then take a look at how their site's set up. So maybe we can take some cues from their specific site structure. Then also, a lot of times we have a kickoff questionnaire. So our projects, our website projects with our clients start with this big initial sort of discovery piece where we take them through the questionnaire and get an understanding of how are we going to tell this story. And in that piece, a part of that is they say, okay, here's who we are constantly losing out to business to for one reason or another, or here's who's outperforming us or who's competitors in our area. So we do some of that research on our end in the back end, just through some SEO, some Moz, some Google Analytics, et cetera, and as well as using the HubSpot platform. And then also we rely on our competitors to let us know, hey, these are people who we feel are in our industry who are performing really strongly, that we want to sort of pull cues from, as well as we always have them send us over, hey, send us some examples of sites you really like, of things that you think, companies who you think are really getting it right. And then we take some cues from that as well. So if someone's doing something well and something's performing well, we don't necessarily always need to restructure the foundation, but we can take some cues from that and incorporate it into what might make sense for our site structure, etc.
So, taking into account everything you've said till now, what would you say are the three things that every successful website must have?
Yeah, I would say number one is a clear and clean structure. I cannot tell you how many times people come to us saying, like, yeah, we only have like 10 pages on our site. We just need a new site. And we do a crawl of the site and we discover like thousands and thousands of pages that they don't even know about that are out there somewhere ranking. So having a clear structure that makes sense for your user's journey, there's so much that goes into it, but having a clear structure, having clear messaging, and I'm going to kind of cheat by baking SEO into that. So with all the technical SEO pieces in there in mind, so thinking through, what does this need to communicate clearly to tell the user's story, and also how can we get the technical SEO pieces right in here so that we're using the right language and telling the right story for what our users are searching. So if you have a stunning site that tells all the right message, but you don't have that SEO piece in place, it's not going to be successful if no one's going to find your site. So that's a really important piece for us as well. And then lastly, having calls to actions, or having some sort of place on your site where a visitor can actually convert or actually do business with you or download your guide or interact with your brand in such a way that you can continue to nurture them, is going to be a big game changer. That's one of the things I recommend as such a quick win for anyone listening who doesn't have this on their site already, but creating sort of that clear call to action. That's the first step of doing business with you. So let's say maybe that's schedule a call or booking a demo or requesting a quote or whatever that first step your sales team takes to actually engage with the client. Maybe it's buy now if you're e-commerce. Creating that clear call to action in the top right and center of your site is something that we do just off the bat on any of our site projects. And it's insane the difference that just making it easy, reducing calories for me as a user to actually go in and say, oh, okay, I know where to get started. I don't have to go digging for it. I don't have to waste energy on my end to know how to actually just do business with you, is something that is such a quick win. But call to actions in general, having some sort of lead nurturing on your site is going to be another success that I think every website that's doing well, performing well, and generating leads needs for sure.
So do you have examples of websites that are doing well in one of these three spheres, or a website that is doing well in all three of these spheres? Any popular website you can think of,
Oh gosh,
or any client, or
um, let me. I might have to think through that and send you over some. I obviously all the sites that we build selfishly, I think do that well. But then I think that I think HubSpot actually does a decently good job. Obviously, the StoryBrand website does a really good job at following the StoryBrand methodology with all of these pieces. Um, and then, yeah, I'll have to think as far as popular websites if there's any that come to mind worth that piece.
Yeah, because one thing that I've noticed is just websites getting simpler and simpler and more minimalistic, but they really have thought through all these three things as well, while at the same time
Yeah.
trying to be like, minimalistic at the same time. So I was thinking of the Tesla website, for instance,
Yes.
is
Yeah.
actually quite good at doing that. So on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great example. Yeah, it's cool to see a lot of companies moving that way because I know that's what I want to see as a user. I want you to make my life easier when I get to your site. With less options, I don't want to be overwhelmed with all the places I have to go on your site. I want to be really clear. I know who I am. I know I'm looking for. I know I'm looking to buy a Tesla or X, Y, and Z, and I know exactly where to go. And I don't have to read a ton to figure out how and where to get there. So I've been excited to see that trend become more and more popular on sites as a whole.
So speaking of trends, how do you stay updated on industry trends and advancements in data-driven design and user experience?
Yeah, so I'm a part of a ton of groups. We actually have the privilege of helping to lead the CMS for Marketers study group and office hours alongside of HubSpot. So we are a part of a group of marketers who are doing, what we're talking about right now, building sites, building campaign assets. So being a part of a ton of those kind of groups, we're always going to training. So we've done the StoryBrand training multiple times. I think connecting with people who are doing it, and then also obviously learning from some industry trends and keeping up with some different news articles, etc., is always helpful. But talking to people who are actually doing it and have the numbers for their clients or have specific results is one way that I always love to do. And then just seeing what's out there, and I'm so keenly aware because this is what I'm in and doing every day. Every time I get on a site or I navigate just in my own personal life, I'm always taking notes of, oh, this is interesting. Like you're saying Tesla, if you're on a site like something like that, and you're just very aware of what they're doing. So yeah, connecting with other marketers, other people in the industry who are doing the things, connecting with groups who you can learn from, like StoryBrand or HubSpot, these huge companies who are always putting out new data and information about best practices that they have access to from hosting millions and millions of sites, etc. As well as connecting with people in the industry and just keeping your eyes out for the latest and greatest.
And what are you updating a website to match the current trend? Because there are some companies whose websites remain the same for 10 years, and one fine day
Yes.
they realize, oh, they actually look quite ancient. But there are other
Yes.
companies that are constantly changing their interface, and that annoys
Mhm.
users sometimes as well because they're used to the old
Totally.
style. So where do you think the balance is?
Yeah, I definitely do. I would agree it's a fine balance. I would say that the websites that we build and how we like to approach websites internally and how I think is the smartest way to approach websites is kind of this growth driven design model where it's not a print campaign. It's not something you're sending to print and you're not going to touch for another X years, especially if you are hosting your site on a platform where you have data, which a lot of the site hosting platforms now you have access to a ton of data. What we like to do is set a site live. And obviously, anytime you're doing something like that, anytime you're making changes on your site, there's some sort of guesswork that you have to take, at least in the beginning, when making some of those decisions, even about your user journey or your ideal buyer persona. You can do as much research as possible, but at the end of the day, you have to make a decision and set it live. Um, and then what we love to do is actually use research and data that you can see, even heat mapping through tools like Lucky Orange and Hotjar, to see how users are experiencing the site, how users are interacting with the site, and then making small iterations from there, not overhauling. So every time I go to the homepage of your site, it's a completely new menu with completely new X, Y, and Z. But every 6 months, at least taking inventory of, hey, what's working well on the site and what's maybe not working well, and then making small iterations as you learn from real life users' data. And as your sales team is talking to customers who are interacting with your site, what are they saying? What are the pieces that they're looking for that they're not able to easily find on your site? Once you have that data, it's like pure gold. It's difficult to sift through because there is so much of it and so much you can do with it. But using that to sort of have this growth driven design approach where you're slowly making iterations every 6 months, doing an inventory and saying, hey, what pages do we need to maybe optimize? What can we change about color schemes, etc., to continue to grow this site? And obviously, depending on the size and the scale of the company, you might be able to do that more often. But I think at a minimum, every 6 months to a year for like a small mid-sized company should be taking a look at the data they have for their site and seeing how they can iterate to actually improve the site based on how users are using it.
Okay, so for our audience members who are actually interested, could you walk us through a specific project where you utilize data to improve the user experience?
For sure. So we do this all the time. We do it specifically, obviously, in the beginning of a site where we go through sort of that inventory and we do a ton of data to see what well, first of all, we crawl the whole site, so we make sure we have a really clear understanding of exactly what lives and exists on your site, which I would recommend anyone doing at any point. We use Screaming Frog. If you use Screaming Frog, if you use HubSpot, you can actually obviously see a list of all of your entire sites hosted in HubSpot. You can see a ton of great data about all of your HubSpot pages, but starting with some sort of inventory of what exists on your site, so you know what pages are out there, how they're performing to at least some degree. And then from there, obviously, we make decisions based on conversations of users for, um, you know, what that main site structure should be. But once you have a site live and you're looking at data to see how should we iterate or how should we optimize this site to improve or to match user experience, a simple way to start is to look at like page views, looking at page bounce rates. So seeing how many people are navigating to a specific page. Is the bounce rate really high on that page? Is that because they're finding the information that they wanted to find on that page quickly? Or is that because maybe the name of the page or the way they got to that page or the experience they were expecting to have on that page is not what they're having on that page? Looking at some of that data, looking at some of the keywords, how did they get to that page? And then saying, okay, maybe we can make iterations to if a lot of traffic is navigating their way through to this page on our site, and the bounce rate's really high, so they're maybe not finding the information they want to find. What were they expecting to find on this page? Because so many people got there and wanted to see something X, Y, and Z. How can we optimize or make this page make more sense for the traffic that's getting there? How can we update the content? Or how can we maybe remove this page altogether and create a different experience for the one that makes sense for us? Also, I think the easiest way if you're looking to do this just from the get-go is looking at your top viewed pages. So the top 5, 10 viewed pages on your site. Does that make sense for your business, for your company? Does that make sense as far as page content? What lives, what exists on those pages? looking at how users are getting there, how you can maybe take a lot of eyeballs that are getting on a specific page, but optimize the page content to make more sense for a user on the page. Also, adding in call to actions, you can do tests on, like, what I recommend is having that main call to action across the board on your entire site. And what we see a lot of people doing with main calls to action are changing them. So what on the top right corner, they'll maybe have let's chat. In the front center of their site, they'll have schedule a visit, and in the bottom, they'll have get started. And what I would recommend, and a simple thing you can do right now to test or optimize your site, is to keep that main call to action, the language, the color, the styling of the button itself consistent every single place that it lives across your entire site. And then, and there are a couple of reasons for that. Your brain needs to see something 8 times before it really registers it. So you want to reinforce that. And you're also not wasting as many calories for me when I'm saying, what's the difference between let's chat and schedule a visit, or let's chat and get started, and I'm not sure which button to click on. So if you have these call to actions, number one, I would recommend just right off the bat, keeping them all consistent. And then number two, doing some data, switching up the messaging maybe every 5 months to from let's chat to schedule a call, and seeing which of those calls to actions is getting you more leads, more conversions, more click-through rates, etc. Focusing on the pages that you do have conversions on, starting there to do some optimizations on how many people are actually converting. If not a lot of people are converting, how can we make this message clearer or stronger so people actually do want to convert? Are our top viewed pages, do they have some sort of conversion on them? So is there a place, if a ton of people are going to this specific blog because it has really good SEO, are we sending them somewhere from there? So just sort of mining through the crazy amounts of data that you can get within a site. Obviously, there's a ton more you can get into with heat mapping. So you can use tools like I mentioned, Lucky Orange or Hotjar, to actually see where a user is navigating on the site. So it'll show you a heat map of where their mouse is scanning. A lot of times we see people trying to click on things that the functionality within the site is not built to have a clickable feature there. So a simple change in that front would just be, hey, let's make this click somewhere, or let's make it feel less like it should be able to be clicked. So there's sort of a mass amount, but a good place to start is looking at your top viewed pages, looking at your conversion pages, and looking at the data for how can we make small iterations to this to see if we can see improvements, test it for a while, and then iterate again.
So is there a particularly challenging project you've managed like this, and how did you overcome any obstacles during that process?
Overcome any obstacles when sort of optimizing sites?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say just making time on the calendar to actually do it, especially if you're a business owner or just a marketer who this is obviously a part of our job. So it's something we're doing proactively all the time. But if it's something that it's so easy, like you said, to have a site and just set it and forget it and have it for 5-6 years, never touch it, never look at the data. So making time to take inventory of how your site is performing or how your client's site is performing, every 6 months, every year, at least doing a deep dive into, is this making sense? Obviously, more often, I would recommend reviewing your site for SEO. So even you can set up alerts if you have Moz, or if you have HubSpot, do the SEO scans. So I would say the biggest challenge I see for most people trying to do this is just actually setting aside time on the calendar to make it happen. So that what I would say would be the number one thing. And then number two, don't overcomplicate it. It doesn't have to be this whole, like you said, site redesign or complete overhaul of your site every time you're wanting to sort of update or make enhancements to your site. You can start small. You can start with making 1 or 2 iterations every month. And then eventually, obviously, your site's going to take on this whole new look and feel. So start with your most impactful pages, your top viewed pages, your conversion pages, the pages you really want to matter and have the most bang for your buck on your site, and make the time to actually look at the data and make the changes. And I think it can go a long way for people who are hosting and managing and creating content on sites specifically.
So, coming to the client side of things, how do you handle client feedback and make revisions to visual content?
Yeah, we this again is always a fun and delicate balance because when creating a site, you want to create something that the client is really proud of, that they are excited about, that feels like it fits their specific vision and creative direction. But also, there's obviously expertise, and there is sometimes design dissent or disagreement between maybe our agency or me specifically and the client, where they want to head with a specific design direction. And I think having done this enough, there's enough that I know of. You're paying us. For me, I'm the marketing team that they're paying to work with to create a really clear site that communicates well. So there's some leverage there when saying, hey, maybe we would make this decision because of X, Y, and Z. Usually when a client has a differing opinion or wants to see something a specific way visually, what I'll do is I'll show them both options, and 9 times out of 10 when they see one option compared to another option, we can kind of lean them that way by giving them what they want and then showing them maybe a better way to do it. Is sort of the least abrasive way. And then also we have the benefit of having built so many, probably I think the agency close to 500 sites at this point, that we have a ton of data to pull from. So some of the decisions obviously are just design decisions that don't make a big impact at the end of the day. Should it be blue? Should it be green? Um, some of these are not going to be make or break, but obviously some of those decisions can be. And sort of it's our job to decide when and where to provide some of that pushback and say, hey, because of data, we maybe would recommend your H1 or this being structured a little differently or the messaging being a little different. And we have some data to back us up for why we would make that specific decision, whether it be content or design or structure, etc. But yeah, usually if it's a specific just design decision that's not going to make a big impact on another piece, I'll try to show them both options and steer them in a direction that I think is going to be a little bit more modern and up to date and visually appealing for sure. But those are fun conversations to navigate through. It's always a fun challenge to be able to work within different brands and sort of bring something creative to the table that's going to make the brand and the customer really happy, and also feel like we're doing a good job of elevating who they are and how they're communicating as a brand.
So, I suppose you have a lot of templates from which you can give choices to the clients who don't agree with a particular style.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we do. We have a template library that we work with specifically, actually, which we do for a ton of different reasons, but it definitely makes some of those kinds of decisions a little easier for sure.
Right. So, the last question for you is of a personal kind. It is, what would you be doing in your life right now if not this?
A great question. Um, I am, fun fact, I'm a little over 7 months pregnant right now.
Oh,
So, yeah, so that's exciting. So I think, if not for this, looking into the future, I'm really excited as a creative about real estate. I would love to be hosting or managing rental properties, would be something I would be really excited to do in the future. And obviously, all of the marketing tools in your table go into all of that. But what I'm most excited about in the future, which I'll still be doing this, but alongside of this, is just growing and building family and having a little baby. So yeah, something along the lines of real estate or managing real estate. There's so many creative ways to be making money even online. So really interested and inspired by people who are doing that successfully through a ton of different avenues. So yeah, I'm excited for what's to come. I'm excited to be in this wheelhouse because I think it goes a long way for any other area of business or world you might find yourself in. But I think if I wasn't doing this, I'd love to be designing and managing Airbnbs.
that's interesting because we also did some research on you. Our team did some research and they found that if you had all the time in the world, somewhere on the internet it says you'll buy a sailboat and go sailing.
Yes,
You said that somewhere.
that's true. If money was an option, and I could be doing absolutely anything. I live in Florida, right by the water, so that would
Hmm.
probably be my dream life. Would just be to yeah, to be able to just sail and spend time outdoors with loved ones.
Right, well, that was the last question. Thanks everyone for joining us for this month's episode of Outgrow's Marketer of the Month. That was Megan Sullivan, who is the creative director at Nextiny Marketing. Thanks for joining us, Megan.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a blast.
Check out their website for more details, and we'll see you next month once again with another Marketer of the Month.